Imagine you're suspended in this massive cloud of incandescent gas. It's thick, it's swirling, and it's completely suffocating. You are effectively blind out there because your sensors are just bouncing back static.
Right.
And right in the center of this mess, there's a bloated, angry red star called Pantera that is just spitting out hard radiation like it's going out of style. Objectively, it is the worst neighborhood in the galaxy.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, drop a starship into that mix. But not just any starship. We're talking about the USS Enterprise-E, the sleek, sovereign-class powerhouse that everyone thinks is invincible. But here's the reality check in this nebula. The Enterprise isn't the apex predator. It is the prey.
It creates such a visceral image, doesn't it? I mean, when we think of the Enterprise, specifically the E, we usually picture it gleaming against a starfield, engaging the Borg, or, cruising through Federation space on a diplomatic tour.
Yeah, the hero ship.
Exactly, the hero ship. But the source material we're covering today, the story Slings and Arrows 01, Sea of Troubles by J. Stephen York, it strips all that glamour away immediately. The ship is dirty, the hull is suffering from severe particle erosion, the shields are fluctuating because the nebula's dust density is so high, it's literally physically grinding against the deflectors.
Wow.
It sets this tone of claustrophobia that we rarely get to see in standard Starfleet logs.
Claustrophobia is the perfect word for it. It feels like a submarine movie.
Yes.
And that is exactly what we are jumping into today. Welcome to our deep dive, where we unpack this fascinating lost chapter of the Enterprise-E's history.
Yeah.
Our mission today is to look at this very specific high-stakes narrative. It's this period that often gets skipped over in the history books, the shakedown cruise.
Right, the awkward middle phase.
Yeah. We are post-First Contact, but we are pre-Dominion War explosion. It's this weird, tense limbo where everyone knows a fight is coming, but they aren't quite ready for it yet.
That transition period is so critical to understanding the psychology of the crew here.
Yeah.
You really have to remember, the Enterprise-D, the Galaxy-class ship, was essentially a luxury liner in comparison.
Oh, for sure. It had families, schools.
Floor carpet everywhere, holodecks running all the time. It was built for exploration, for diplomacy. But the Enterprise, the Sovereign class, that was built with the Borg in mind.
It's a warship.
It is. It's smaller, it's faster, it's heavily armed, and it is largely devoid of the creature comforts of its predecessor. But the crew is still adjusting to that. Captain Picard is still trying to be the diplomat in a ship that was fundamentally designed to be a weapon. And this story really forces him to confront that dichotomy head-on.
It's the classic man versus machine struggle. But the machine is his own ship. So our deep dive today is going to analyze this specific incident in the Pantera Nebula. We're going to look at the tragedy that kicks it all off, the psychological thriller of hunting a shapeshifter who knows your face better than you do, and ultimately the moral cost of winning a war before it technically even starts.
And we absolutely have to discuss the antagonist. In all the Starfleet encounters with the Dominion, specifically the Founders, this particular changeling stands out. It's not just a soldier. It has a motive that is, well, it's unsettlingly artistic.
Unsettlingly artistic. That is a great tease. We will definitely get there. But first, let's set the stage with the players. We know Picard, Riker, Crusher, Data, the whole gang. But the source text puts a massive spotlight on a character who usually sits in the background. Lieutenant Sean Hawk.
Yeah.
He's the flight controller. And the text refers to him as a plank owner. Now, I've heard this term thrown around in terrestrial naval history, but what does it actually mean for a Starfleet officer in the 24th century?
It's a term steeped in old naval tradition going back centuries on Earth. A plank owner is a crew member who was assigned to the ship before it was even a ship.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were there when the keel was laid, or, in this context, when space frame was being welded together in the orbital dry dock. They didn't just walk aboard when the carpet was laid. They saw the skeleton of the vessel.
So they have a sort of ownership stake in the soul of the ship.
Precisely. For someone like Lieutenant Hawk, the Enterprise isn't just a posting. It is his ship. He knows where the conduits rattle. He knows how the impulse engines hum when they are at 98% efficiency versus 100%.
He's tuned into it.
Exactly. As the con officer, he is the one physically steering this massive vessel. When you combine that tactile control with the immense pride of being a plank owner, you get a level of devotion that borders on the familial. He loves this ship.
Which raises the stakes significantly because the ship is being threatened not just from the outside, but from the inside.
Right.
But let's look at the outside threat first. The Enterprise is hiding in this thick soup of a nebula, dodging pulse phaser blasts. But it turns out They're actually running a war game. They are playing tag with another Federation ship, the USS Samson.
And the disparity between these two ships is really worth noting. The Samson is a Miranda-class vessel.
Okay, lay it out for us. For the listener who doesn't memorize Starfleet technical manuals, what is the fundamental difference between a Sovereign class and a Miranda class?
It is generational. The Miranda-class design is over a century old. Think of the USS Reliant from the whole Khan incident.
Right, the one with the roll bar on top.
Exactly. It's a workhorse, reliable, modular, tough, but it is a relic compared to the Sovereign. The Enterprise-E has regenerative shielding, quantum torpedoes, bioneural gel packs running the computer core instead of standard isolinear optical chips.
So it's a completely unfair fight.
Totally. The Samson is basically a B-52 bomber trying to dogfight an F-22 Raptor. It is angular and clunky versus sleek and deadly.
So why are they fighting? Is Picard just bullying his friends to blow off steam?
Not at all. It is a vital stress test. The captain of the Samson is Roger Adrian, an old friend of Picard's. Starfleet Command is terrified of the Dominion. They need to know if the older ships in the fleet, the ones that actually make up the backbone of the defense lines, can stand up to modern tactics. So Picard is pushing the Samson to its absolute limit, simulating a Dominion attack profile.
And Picard wins, obviously. He pulls a slingshot maneuver around a planetary remnant, which is just classic Picard flair, and gets a drop on him. The exercise ends. They're about to tow the Samson home because it pushed its engines way too hard. It feels like a job well done.
Yeah.
And then the nightmare starts.
It happens in an instant. The Samson reports a total power failure. And we aren't talking about a blown fuse or a minor relay trip. We mean total. Antimatter containment, impulse power, life support, artificial gravity, it all just vanishes.
Wow.
The ship becomes a dead brick in space.
And in the Pantera Nebula, being a dead brick is a death sentence.
It is. Without navigational deflectors, the ambient radiation from the Red Star Pantera starts cooking the hull immediately. But the timing is the real killer here. At that exact moment, Pantera releases a massive solar flare, a highly directed stream of superheated plasma.
Talk about the worst possible luck. Or maybe not luck.
We will get to that. But the immediate situation is catastrophic. The Enterprise tries to help. They try to extend their shields around the Samson. They try to get a tractor beam lock. But the nebula's interference is just too strong. The radiation scatter prevents the transporters from locking on to any life signs. They are completely helpless.
The description in the logs is haunting. Picard is on the view screen with Captain Adrian. Adrian realizes what is happening. He knows the shields are down. He sees the flare coming on the sensors, and he accepts it. He tells Picard, I'm staying on the bridge.
It's the burden of command in its rawest form. Adrian knows there is no escape. He chooses to die at his post rather than panic, and then the feed just cuts.
Yep.
The source describes the Samson being struck by the plasma stream. It doesn't just explode, it vaporizes. The whole structure loses cohesion instantly. Over 200 crew members, people Picard knew, people who were just laughing about the war game 5 minutes ago, are converted into subatomic particles.
That shift from wargame fun to mass casualty event is jarring. It whipsaws the crew, and you can see how it affects Picard right away. He goes ice cold. He goes from good game, Roger, to analyze everything, because ships don't just lose power like that.
Exactly. A Miranda-class ship, despite its age, has redundant backups for its backups. For main power and auxiliary power to fail simultaneously suggests a systemic cascade failure that shouldn't be possible naturally. Picard refuses to leave the debris field. He orders Data to scour the area for anything, a log buoy, a black box, anything that survived the vaporization.
And Data, being the miracle worker he is, manages to find a damaged data recorder. This brings us to the forensic investigation phase. I always love when Star Trek goes full CSI. How does Data piece this together?
It's a brilliant piece of deduction. Data reconstructs the final milliseconds of the Samson's engineering logs. He finds traces of a rare contaminant in the drive plasma. It wasn't a mechanical failure at all. It was chemical sabotage. Someone introduced a compound that destabilized the warp reaction, causing the computer to scram the core and dump the reserves just to prevent a breach.
So the ship didn't fail. It was murdered.
Effectively, yes. But the smoking gun isn't the chemical, it's the personnel logs. Data cross-references the internal sensors and finds an impossible anomaly regarding Ensign Zan Lammer, the tactical officer.
The two places at once problem.
Right. The internal sensors show Ensign Lammer asleep in his bunk on Deck 4. But at the exact same timestamp, security logs show Ensign Lammer entering the phaser control room, which is where the sabotage likely originated.
Physics generally frowns on people being in two places simultaneously, unless wrong.
Unless one of them isn't people.
In the context of the rising tension with the Dominion, this points to one thing: a changeling, a founder. Let's pause here and really frame the threat of a changeling for a second. We aren't just talking about a really good disguise kit or holographic projectors. We are talking about a biological entity that can alter its molecular structure to become anything. A person, a dog, a fog, a piece of furniture.
It is the ultimate infiltration unit. A changeling doesn't just look like the target. They mimic the voice, the retinal patterns, the DNA markers temporarily, even the tactile feel of skin. But more importantly for the investigation, the logic dictates that if a changeling sabotaged the Samson, it wouldn't just stay on board to die in the solar flare.
Right, self-preservation. It blew up the ship to cover its tracks, but it definitely needed an exit strategy.
And the only exit strategy available in that nebula was the Enterprise. Just minutes before the explosion, during the war game post-mortem, the Samson beamed over 8 transfer officers to the Enterprise.
A classic Trojan horse situation.
Classic. The Changeling replaced one of those 8 officers, beamed over, and then detonated the Samson to kill the only witnesses who might have noticed the switch.
So now the Enterprise is trapped in a hostile nebula. They just watched their friends die, and they know the murderer is on board, but they don't know who it is. That is a massive pressure cooker.
And this is where the story pivots from an external threat to an internal investigation. The focus quickly narrows down to one of those transfer officers, Lieutenant Linda Addison. She is the incoming chief of security.
Which is deeply ironic, considering she is the primary suspect. But she's also closely connected to our plank owner, Lieutenant Hawk.
They were academy classmates, very close friends. The text mentions they used to go rock climbing together on Vulcan. Hawk is absolutely devastated by the Samson tragedy, but he is momentarily relieved to see a friendly face. So he seeks Linda out in 10 forward.
And this is where we get into the uncanny valley territory, the feeling that something is just wrong.
The interaction is incredibly tense. Hawk sits down with Linda. He expects shared grief. He expects a friend he knows. Instead, he gets something else entirely. First, there's the flirting.
Now remind us why flirting is a red flag here.
Because Lieutenant Hawk is gay. The real Linda Addison knew this. It was a foundational part of their friendship. They would joke about finding dates for each other. For this Linda to start touching his hand suggestively, making eyes at him, it is a fundamental error in the performance. The Changeling did its homework on Linda's Starfleet service record, but missed the personal nuance.
It's the lack of soft data.
Yeah.
The Changeling knows the stats, but not the soul. And then there's the obsession with the ship.
This is the second major tell. Hawk brings a PAD with the engineering schematics to show her the security grids, since she's the new security chief. But Linda doesn't look at the grids. She looks at the curves of the ship's hull. She physically traces the lines of the Enterprise on the screen with her finger. The source describes it as sensual. She calls the ship beautiful, but not in the way an engineer admires a well-tuned engine. She looks at it like a predator looks at a meal, or like a fanatic collector looks at a rare painting.
That is deeply creepy. It's objectification on a starship scale.
It completely freaks Hawk out. And then she slips up on the rock climbing. She mentions hating the climbs on Vulcan because they were too hard. But Hawk remembers the real Tal. Linda loved the difficulty. That was the whole point for her. That contradiction seals it for him. He knows this thing wearing his friend's face is an imposter.
So Hawk goes from grieving friend to rogue investigator. He decides to break into Linda's quarters while she is on duty.
Which is a court-martial offense, strictly speaking. But he is desperate. He uses an old code they shared for a book club back at the Academy Poe Alpha Nevermore.
I really appreciate that even in the 24th century, people use passwords based on their favorite writers.
It works, too. He gets into her quarters. It looks like standard Starfleet decor, but he finds a hidden stasis box, a small refrigerated unit.
And inside,
vials of blood.
This is the moment the horror really lands for the listener. Why does a changeling keep vials of blood in a fridge?
Because of the screening protocols. Starfleet knows about changelings by this point. They have instituted phaser drills and random blood screenings. The rule is if you draw blood from a changeling, the separated part reverts to the gelatinous state, the orange goo. But if a changeling is smart, they will carry a supply of their victim's actual blood. If someone asks for a test, they use sleight of hand to provide the real human blood instead of their own.
Wow. So finding the blood confirms 2 things. 1, this is absolutely a changeling. And 2, the real Linda Addison is dead.
Exactly. The source later confirms she was killed back on Vulcan before the transfer even happened. The changeling has been playing the long con. Hawk is standing there, holding the proof of his friend's murder in his hands.
Hawk takes this straight to Picard, and Picard, rather than storming in with phasers blazing, decides to set a trap. He invites Linda to his ready room under the guise of a briefing.
Because Picard is a diplomat at heart, even now. He wants to understand the enemy before he destroys it. He locks the door, quietly activates a level 10 force field around the room, and then confronts her with the evidence.
And the reaction from the Changeling is fascinating. It doesn't panic. It doesn't try to bluff or deny it. It just drops the act.
It sheds the persona of Linda Addison like a heavy coat. And this is where we get the real psychological deep dive into what we can call the deviant changeling.
You called it deviant earlier. Let's unpack that. The Founders usually hate solids humanoids like us. They want to impose strict order. But this one seems different.
Very different. The Great Link, which is the collective consciousness of the changelings, generally views solids as chaotic, violent, and inherently inferior. Their primary goal is control through subjugation. But this changeling expresses a profound fascination with forms. It tells Picard that it loves the physical shapes solids create. It speaks about the Enterprise as if it were a masterwork sculpture.
Called the ship chocolate or fine wine, right?
Yes. It has this hedonistic appreciation for the architecture of the ship. It tells Picard, I don't want to destroy your beautiful ship. I want to save it.
Save it. That is a really loaded phrase coming from a saboteur who just vaporized 200 people. How does it plan to save the ship?
By neutralizing it. The Changeling argues that the Federation's defeat by the Dominion is inevitable. The Dominion is ancient, they are powerful, and they are utterly ruthless. Resistance is mathematically futile. If the Enterprise goes to war, the Dominion will inevitably destroy it. And the Changeling finds that physically wasteful. It wants to steal the shakedown logs, the detailed, classified records of the ship's performance, its sensor blind spots, its structural stress points.
So if it steals the logs, the Dominion knows exactly how to disable the Sovereign class without blowing it up.
Precisely. If the Dominion has that critical data, the Federation would realize their flagship design is compromised. They would be forced to keep the Enterprise and all her sister ships on the rear lines. They would be strategically useless in a firefight. The Changeling wants to turn the Enterprise into a museum piece, preserved, beautiful, and utterly impotent.
It's a twisted form of love. It's like, I love you so much, I'm going to make sure you can never fight back. It is incredibly possessive.
It treats the ship as the only thing of value in the sector. And the crew, the 800 living, breathing people on board, to the Changeling, they are just an infestation. Useful animals, it calls them. Vermin living inside a masterpiece. It's chilling because it completely dehumanizes the crew while anthropomorphizing the metal and hull plating.
Picard tries to reason with it.
Right.
He tries to appeal to this artistic sensibility. He says, if you love individuality and form so much, why do you serve the Great Link? They want everyone to be exactly the same. They want conformity.
It's a very strong philosophical pivot. Picard is trying to drive a wedge between the Changeling and the Dominion ideology. He's probing for weakness. But the indoctrination is just too deep. The Changeling laughs it off. It views human philosophy as fleeting and childish. And then it demonstrates just how superior it feels.
The escape.
Picard thinks he has it trapped. Force fields are supposed to be impenetrable. But the Changeling turns into its liquid state. It flows onto the floor. It finds a microscopic imperfection in the deck, plating maybe a tiny seam where the carpet meets the bulkhead, or a microfracture in a conduit gap underneath the couch.
And it just leaks out.
It literally pours itself through the cracks. Picard watches as his high-value prisoner just dissolves and flows away. It's a moment of total helplessness for a starship captain. You can't handcuff a puddle.
So now the Changeling is loose on the ship. It knows it's been identified. The element of surprise is gone, but the threat level just skyrocketed.
The ship goes into immediate lockdown. Total paranoia takes over the crew. Picard orders everyone to travel in pairs. They are doing constant phaser sweeps of every deck. But the crew is understandably terrified. If that chair you are sitting on could be a murderer, how do you even do your job?
And Hawk is appointed acting chief of security because of the vacancy. That has to be an incredibly heavy burden for him. He is hunting the thing that is actively wearing his dead friend's face.
Hawk is fueled entirely by rage at this point. He tells Picard he wants justice. Picard is still trying to be tactical. He wants to capture it, interrogate it, retrieve whatever data it might have already accessed. But Hawk just wants to vaporize it. It is a classic conflict between the need for law and the need for raw revenge.
The Changeling doesn't go into hiding, though. It starts taunting them. There is this incredibly tense scene in a lecture hall where Picard agrees to meet it again.
This is pure psychological warfare. The Changeling appears on the stage, it shifts forms rapidly just to disorient Picard. It becomes a water pitcher, then it becomes Linda again. Then, and this is the cruelest cut, it becomes Counselor Troy.
Why Troy? Out of everyone.
Because Troy represents empathy, trust, emotional intimacy. She is his confidant. By wearing her face, the Changeling is violating Picard's safe space. And then it starts reciting names. Beverly Crusher, Vash, Kamala.
Those are all women Picard has deeply loved or cared for over the years.
Exactly. The Changeling is saying, I have accessed your personal logs. I know your secrets. I know your heart. You are completely naked before me. It is a profound violation of privacy designed to break his resolve.
And when Picard tries to bluff and say he's not intimidated, the Changeling just laughs and turns into a Perithian bat.
Which is this nimble, alien flying creature. It screeches and just flies out the ventilation shaft. It is openly mocking him. It is proving that it can go anywhere, be anyone at any time. It firmly believes it has already won.
But it hasn't won yet because it still needs those shakedown logs, and the logs are stored on a master isolinear chip. To get them, it has to go to the source. It goes to main engineering.
This scene is straight out of a sci-fi horror movie. Geordi LaForge is working frantically in engineering. Data walks in. He asks for the master chip with the logs. Geordi is tired, he's stressed, he is about to hand it over, but something stops him.
The uncanny valley strikes again.
Geordi knows Data better than anyone in the universe. He senses a micro-hesitation, a slight variance in his cadence. So he tests him. He asks, Data, why did the chicken cross the wormhole?
A joke. He tests him with a joke.
A context-dependent joke. The real Data, who has recently installed his emotion chip, acts a very specific way about humor. He tries to overanalyze it, or he laughs too hard, or he is deeply puzzled by the absurdity. He always reacts. But this Data just stares blankly, doesn't process the humor subroutine.
And Geordi knows instantly, you're not him.
But it's too late. The Changeling drops the disguise. It attacks Geordi, throwing it aside like a rag doll. But the real target isn't Geordi. It's the real Data, who is working at a nearby console.
What happens next is, well, it's pretty gross.
It is visceral. The Changeling essentially liquefies and invades Data. It forces itself into Data's open cranial access port.
It goes inside his actual head.
It permeates his positronic net. It's physically jamming his gears and circuits with its own gelatinous body. It disables the strongest, fastest member of the crew from the inside out. It's a horrifying bodily violation of the android. In the confusion, while Geordi is reeling, the Changeling grabs the isolinear chip containing the logs.
And just to make sure they can't easily pursue, it spits acid on the main shield relays.
Right. Remember that solar flare from the Star Pantera? It's coming back around. The Changeling sabotages the shield, so the Enterprise is suddenly vulnerable to the environment again. If they stay to hunt the Changeling, the ship burns in the flare. If they leave the nebula, the Changeling escapes with the secrets. It has forced a checkmate scenario.
But Picard doesn't accept checkmate. He decides to flip the game board entirely. And this leads to the climax in the nacelle control room.
Picard realizes he can't outfight a shapeshifter. He has to outsmart it. He lures it to a specific corridor. Hawk and the security teams act as beaters, like in an old-fashioned hunt. They use overlapping force fields to herd the creature down a specific path.
And the creature is done being subtle at this point. It turns into a Klingon Targ.
A massive, spiked, armored boar. It charges blindly through the Jeffries tube, smashing through bulkheads. It is pure, unadulterated aggression now. And they chase it right where Picard wants it, the warp nacelle control room.
Set the scene for us here. What exactly is this room?
It is the absolute heart of the propulsion system. It's a narrow catwalk suspended over the main warp plasma conduits. The energy readings are off the charts. It is blindingly hot, it's loud, and it's incredibly dangerous. And there is an emergency flush vent that leads directly out into open space.
Picard's waiting there, alone. The Changeling arrives, expecting a massive firefight. But Picard does something completely unthinkable. He surrenders.
This is the pivotal moment of the whole story. Picard looks exhausted. He looks beaten. He holds up the isolinear chip, which he managed to grab a copy of during the chaos, and says, "Fine, you win." He tells the Changeling that he has finally accepted the Federation is doomed. He says he's just an old man who wants to save his ship and his crew. Take the logs. Just let us live.
He plays the traitor. He appeals directly to the Changeling's arrogance.
And it works perfectly. Why? Because the Changeling is a massive narcissist. It believes solids are inherently weak. It believes they will always choose base self-preservation over abstract duty. Picard is simply confirming the bias the Changeling already holds. It thinks, finally, the human admits, I am superior.
So the Changeling takes the bait.
It takes the ship, it absorbs it into its gelatinous body, literally sucks the data drive into itself to protect it. And Picard deactivates the force field covering the outer hatch.
And the Changeling just leaves.
It shapeshifts into a spaceborne entity, maybe something like a stellar ray, and shoots out of the vent into the nebula. It is free, it has the data, it has won.
And Picard.
Picard is standing in a room that is about to be flooded with superheated warp plasma from the open vent. He taps his comm badge and beams out with a nanosecond to spare thanks to the transporter interlocks.
Okay, so they survived the encounter. The ship is safe. But the Changeling got away with all the strategic secrets of the Sovereign class? That sounds like a massive loss for Starfleet.
It does, doesn't it? Hawk certainly thinks so. He is furious. He confronts Picard in the debriefing. He says, we let the murderer go. We gave them everything.
But then comes the Section 6 reveal. The aha moment that flips the whole narrative.
Picard reveals the truth to his crew. The chip he gave the Changeling. It was a real chip. But the files on it, they were completely fake. Data had forged a highly detailed set of shakedown logs before the attack. The file name was literally Booby Prize.
Booby Prize. Data's getting cheeky with his emotion chip.
It is a masterstroke of counterintelligence. The logs contain incredibly subtle falsifications. They show shield harmonics that are slightly off frequency. They show structural weak points in the hull that are actually the most heavily armored points.
So when the Dominion eventually analyzes this data,
they will build their entire attack strategy around flaws that simply don't exist. They will target the wrong shield frequencies. They will waste massive amounts of firepower on the strongest armor. When the Dominion fleet engages the Enterprise in the actual war, they will be firing duds. Picard didn't just save the ship, he actively planted a virus in the enemy's tactical database.
That is absolutely brilliant. But in here is the real deep dive part. It brings us back to the psychological cost. Hawk isn't high-fiving anyone in the briefing room.
No, not at all. Hawk is grieving. To him, this isn't a victory. It is a cold transaction, a mathematical calculation. The creature that brutally murdered Linda Addison is still out there. It is alive. It thinks it won. Hawk wants justice. He wants the bad guy dead.
And Picard's response is really the theme of the whole episode. He looks at Hawk and tells him, war isn't about justice.
It is a crushing line. Picard, the man of high ideals, the diplomat, has to admit that the rules have fundamentally changed. He had to lie. He had to act like a coward. He had to let a monster escape to fight another day. He compares it to his experience with the Borg. He says that to fight an enemy like this, you have to lower yourself to their level. You have to become something you hate just to survive.
It really is the loss of innocence for the Enterprise.
Right.
They survived the Sea of Troubles, but they're different now. They're harder. They're more cynical.
The source text calls the ship a beautiful war horse at the very end. It is ready for war. But the crew carries the heavy weight of that deception. They know that in the coming Dominion War, being Starfleet, being open, honest, fair, might just get you killed.
It changes how you watch the rest of the series, really. When you see the Enterprise swooping in to save the day in the later movies, you have to remember they learned how to fight in the mud here. They learned how to lie.
And that is the underlying tragedy. The Changeling wanted to save the ship's physical form, but in a way, the reality of the war is destroying the ship's soul.
That is a really heavy thought to land on. We started with a simple war game, and we ended with a profound moral crisis.
That is the best kind of Star Trek, isn't it?
It really is. Before we sign off, I want to leave you, our listener, with a final provocation. Put yourself in Lieutenant Hawk's boots for a minute. You are standing on the bridge. You are looking at the view screen. You know the creature that killed your best friend is out there laughing at you carrying a fake chip. Your captain says it was a necessary strategic victory. Can you accept that? Is the greater good worth the price of letting a murderer walk free? Or does that victory just taste like ash in your mouth?
It is the central question that defines the entire Dominion War era. Is saving the Federation worth losing the ideals that make the Federation worth saving in the first place?
Something to think about while you are stuck in traffic or doing the dishes today. Huge thanks to our expert for guiding us through the Pantera Nebula.
My pleasure. Just remember to check your friends for orange goo if they start acting a little weird.
Good advice.
Yeah.
And maybe avoid the rock climbing if you aren't feeling it. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. We will catch you on the next mission.